collaboration has added impetus and urgency to the discussion. If you think about the events around the global pandemic and the disparity in access to vaccines, the current financial turmoil, which has seen countries in the traditional donor, quote, north, drawing back from some of their commitments to aid, it really is adding additional impetus to this important discussion. And we're talking about collaboration not only in terms of development financing, but also in terms of knowledge sharing, capability development, and models of mutual support. How have actors in the Global South stepped up in this situation? Are we witnessing a new era in development collaboration across the Global South? What is the role of triangular collaboration with the North in this new world order? Sadly, our own efforts at collaboration across the Global South have hit some bumps in the road, and unfortunately 2 of our speakers were unable to make it due to unforeseen circumstances. But I'm extremely honored to be able to welcome a wonderful panel, Kalpana, Kochhar, Director of Development Policy and Finance at the Gates Foundation, and Amer, Bukvic, Director General of Global Practice and Partnerships at the Islamic Development Bank. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start, if I could, with you, Amer. The ISDB, the Islamic Development Bank, is a global leader in Islamic development finance and encouraging cooperation across the Global South. What role does the ISDB and Islamic financing in particular have to play in promoting development collaboration to tackle common challenges in support of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals?
Thank you, James. It's really an honor to be here today and to talk about this very exciting topic. Islamic Development Bank, since its inception, has been championing the South-South cooperation. We are the only MDB that is actually fully composed of the member countries from the South, and also the founders are from the South. So our DNA, in our DNA we have the South-South cooperation. It's very deeply rooted. And actually, regardless of the level of development of our member countries, it's very amazing to see that all of our 57 member countries have something to share. And with this fastly moving global world in which we live today, the South-South cooperation even becomes more relevant. It is more relevant than ever before. But for us, we have seen and we have 40 years of experience in organizing different programs when it comes to trade promotion, investments, capacity building between our 57 member countries. We have 40 years track record in the South-South cooperation, and we have actually a homegrown modality of reverse linkage that we developed. Our first reverse linkage operation that we started was the support of the Kyrgyz agriculture by Indonesian company. It was like artificial insemination program where we took an Indonesian company in 2013 and we helped Kyrgyz Republic because Kyrgyz has 40% of the population of Kyrgyz Republic lives from agriculture. But their contribution to the GDP is only 20%. So there's a problem in efficiency. And they had a very outdated technology when it comes to artificial insemination. So we took a company, Snake from Indonesia, which actually improved their output and their levels of efficiency. We had since then 45 major reverse linkage operations within the ISDB group among 33 member countries. So the South-South and trilingual cooperation really should not be seen only as financial. It is also a capacity building, it is knowledge sharing, and we had very amazing experiences of different kind of knowledges, and sometimes actually the knowledge that South has is more relevant than others. You know, I had a concrete example of myself. We were helping set up an Islamic bank in Albania, and actually you cannot approach these big groups like HSBC or Citibank to establish a new startup bank that would function in Islamic model. So we had an operation from Bosnia that supported the operation in Albania. So this is really, it shows that sometimes the knowledge of the Citibank cannot actually be as efficient in knowledge sharing. Like you have to have a small bank that went through the small bank troubles to understand the troubles of that institution, that you have to bring it up. And also, beside the reverse linkage, ISDB has been very active in the Lives and LLF fund that we are doing together with the Melinda Bill Gates Foundation. Not only between us, but also with Abu Dhabi Fund for Development and Qatar Fund for Development. So the Lives and Livelihoods Fund is an example of bringing up from poverty the least developed countries that we have. It's a great experience that we had together, and actually we are now looking at the LLF 2.0 that we are structuring and looking how to bring it to the current situation and the current conditions in the world, where we are looking also at the climate, we're looking at empowering women and youth, and new dimensions to it. And I think we should jointly call to other financial institutions to join us. It's a very noble cause, that we are doing together. And I hope that our LLF 2.0 would be even a bigger success, and that we would have more partners. I named two beside us, but also King Salman Foundation as the fifth one that works very closely on implementation, the LLF2. So I hope that we would have an appeal to other philanthropical organizations and other developmental institutions to join us in that, because that is actually really something that is needed more than ever, and we have a very good track record there that we can be proud of.
Thank you, Amer. Kalpana, if I could come to you now. What role does the Gates Foundation have in, it's a philanthropic organization based in the USA, sort of almost archetypically global north. What role do they have to play in cooperation initiatives in the global south, and why is the foundation so keen to promote them?
Thank you, James. So let me just, for those of you who may not be familiar, let me restate the vision statement of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is achieving our vision of a world where every person can live a healthy and productive life. I state that because I think I'm inspired by that personally every day coming into work. The foundation does this. It has 38 program areas, ranging from combating infectious diseases, ensuring that children and young people survive and thrive, empowering women, especially in developing countries, and really inspiring people to act in a way that changes the world. We work with our finances, we work with our advocacy, and we really believe that this South-South cooperation, or as both James and Amer just described, knowledge sharing, cooperation about finances, but also just really understanding the development challenges from a perspective that somebody sitting in the global north it's very hard to do. I'm also going to pick up briefly on the Lives and Livelihood Fund that Amer just mentioned. We're very proud of that program. It's a great example, I think, of how countries in the global south can cooperate to take care of themselves. Let me give you a few, as Amer called it, a noble cause with, I think, huge impact. So let me just give you an example of the kind of impact. Our projects under the Lives and Livelihood Fund have controlled infectious diseases, including polio and malaria, strengthened primary health care and women's health, increased productivity in smallholder farms, and brought electricity, sanitation, and financial inclusion to millions of people, in areas where I think it would be very hard for other organizations to work. An example, in Senegal, the Malaria Elimination Project helped distribute 2.5 insecticide-treated bed nets and more than 1 million rapid diagnostic tests. This, the level of impact that we are able to have with this kind of financial investment, I think, is huge. And for this reason, we really think it's, the transformational potential is huge. And so we're also looking forward to LLF2 when 2.0. It's a great example of how South-South platforms can work. Let me mention one other before I turn back to James, and that is digital technology for development. I'm sure you've heard throughout this session today about the power of digital technologies for all sorts of things, but I want to focus on digital technologies for development. What we've seen in many, many countries, unfortunately, sometimes with life and death consequences, is when you have paper-based paper-based systems for flows of funds between governments and service providers, delays can occur and lives can be impacted. But we do believe that digital platforms that are built on interoperable and scalable platforms are the way to go. And by the way, the countries that are leading this effort are in the global south. India is one of them, the biggest example, but others as well. Kenya and many other countries in East Africa are picking up these technologies. They're based on, as I said, they started out with financial inclusion, but now they're growing and spreading to also public financial management, with a view to improving service delivery to reach everybody, but really the poorest as well.
Thank you, Kalpana. I think that are some wonderful examples there. I think what Amer referred to it as reverse linkages of actual transfer of knowledge, transfer of skills, and sharing of technology, and as well as human resources, et cetera, across the South. I'd like to ask you both also, how have you seen cooperation in the Global South evolving over the last few years, and where do you see it going? And within that, what, if any, role is there for sort of the triangular collaboration with the North going forward? And I wonder, Kalpana, if you don't mind, can I start with you this time?
Sure. So yeah, it is a complement. It's emerging as a complement. Look, the global North will always be relevant. I mean, they are traditionally the more advanced countries. They're the ones where money exists, but they, the combination of South-South collaboration, which is self-reliance. Well, incidentally, let me just take the example of going back to my digital tools example. What it allows countries to do in the global South is to actually leapfrog and go ahead of countries that have already adopted technology that is working well but may not be the cutting edge. I think the first reason is necessity. I think there's been we're in a really unprecedented global environment, and I know that people like to say that, but I do believe that there's a reordering of global geopolitics and power that's taking place that is going to force us to think much more creatively about collaboration between the South and the North. And the second is opportunity, and that's what we've been talking about here. I love the concept of the terminology reverse linkages. It's a very evocative way of talking about the work that we're doing. And then before I sort of hand back to you, James, climate change and climate action. Yes, the global North has to play a role. They have the biggest opportunity to reduce, greenhouse gases and in the mitigation space. But the global South has also got to fend for itself when it comes to adaptation and learning from each other, because there's a completely different set of priorities in the global South.
I think that's a very important point that you made, that these are not, I think you made the point earlier, that the North can't really understand how to deal with these things. They're the ones who've caused these problems, but they don't have to deal with them in really the same way.
Right.
And even if they, the technologies that they might use aren't necessarily going to work in the South. It's a really, really good point. Amer, I don't know if there's anything you would like to add to that from your perspective.
I just wanted to say that I fully agree with what was said, but we see the South-South as an alternative or an alternate channel. that does not exclude the cooperation with North-South. So it's an alternate channel that has certain advantages, which is the non-conditionality, the mutual benefit and respect, and it has a long history. However, we are also complementing the North-South, and in the areas like climate change, food security, you see that the South-South is actually complementing the North-South cooperation. So it works in both directions. And what we can talk about about examples, we can talk about the pandemic experience we had. Pandemic really showed a very strong commitment between South-South cooperation in the countries. And we had so many examples of this, like we have with the Institute Pasteur of Senegal in Dakar, where we coordinated to the reverse linkage operation, how we call them. We coordinated the establishment of laboratories in 10 sub-Saharan African countries, and where they were able to I think there is a problem in hearing me. Okay, so another example was the cooperation that we had in the development of N95 masks that we did in relation between Singapore and Jordan. And this was also an amazing experience. But while we had also GIZ from Germany who supported this operation, so it went to the trilingular cooperation that actually evolved. So the experience of COVID really showed another dimension. And we going further, we believe that South-South cooperation has a great potential to continue serving also, as I mentioned, the global South and beyond, tackling also developmental challenges such as food security and the climate change. Now, in the South, we have countries like Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Indonesia, Malaysia, which really have a lot to offer. This country went a long way. Yeah. And now we are working and looking at the projects of Saudi Arabia's kingdom expertise in water desalination, and working in Jordan and implementing the knowledge and the know-how. We're also working on the avoidable blindness project in Africa, that we are working with the King Khalid Eye Specialist Hospital in Saudi Arabia. We are really, this is our flagship program, Alliance to Fight Avoidable Blindness. We are also, in terms of trilingual cooperation, as an MDB, we have a very long-standing experience in supporting and implementing trilingual cooperation interventions in our member countries. We are also an advocate of the Global Partnership Initiative for Effective Trilingual Cooperation, which we are working with OECD and the partners from the North. And it is actually quite evident, even to the North, it is evident that we have a lot to offer to each other, and that we have a lot of win-win situations between us. And I mentioned Germany and GIZ, and we have a lot of examples of such, that they went directly, like in cases of Senegal and Jordan, that they got involved and they enhanced our South-South cooperation. So we generally see the world is becoming a very challenging place, and the only way we can go through this is through a lot of partnerships and cooperations, because the needs are far beyond our capacities. Even the South-South or North-South, we really need to put all our hands together and developing partnerships and effective implementation on ground with all the knowledge that we have from the ground and our 57 countries. I think we have a lot to offer, and I think we cannot do many things we cannot do alone. Even when we are together, we need more partners to handle these very challenging times ahead of us.
Thank you, Amer. I slightly worry that my next question is almost redundant, given all the wonderful examples we've just had of collaboration in terms of technology transfer, in terms of manufacturing capacity, in terms of testing facilities, etc. But there does seem to be a perception, and maybe it's perhaps driven by initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, that development finance collaboration, at least in the South, is mostly focused on heavy infrastructure. Do you think that's a fair characterization? And if not, what can be done to sort of to change that perception? And Kalpana, I'll come to you first again.
Yeah, you're right. I think certainly with the Belt and Road Initiative, I mean, it's not a secret that China's initial investments, particularly in Africa, were focused on infrastructure, roads, ports, bridges, etc. But even that story, I think, is not being told completely accurately. It has shifted with even Chinese development assistance focused much more over time on health and on agriculture. But you know, and of course, given the scale of the needs of infrastructure in the South, it's not that surprising. That still remains the case. But we've got, you know, I'll give you another example of the LLF and how that has served to improve sectors outside, especially in health. This is an example from Pakistan, where we've been working to eradicate polio. The initiative in Pakistan became the largest disease surveillance network in the whole world. 40 million children were vaccinated, 250,000 vaccinations were mobilized, and more than 400 million doses were injected. And in 2021, there was only one case of wild polio virus was occurred in Pakistan. It's not a battle that we've won yet. We still need, you know, vigilance. As you know, polio is flaring up in other parts of the world, but that's an example of cooperation that's not on hard infrastructure, but and actually a goal that's within reach and that everyone should be inspired to reach. So that's just an example of the work that the foundation has done and I'm actually quite proud of.
Thank you, Kalpana. I think last word to Amer. The demand for financing is so huge. I mean, infrastructure is expensive, but these sorts of projects as well. You know, polio eradication is an expensive business. There's such a need for finance. Given this huge gap in financing in the South-South collaboration, what can be done to close that gap?
As I mentioned in my earlier address, actually the secret of our success is cooperation and partnerships. And we really have to seek the way how to involve as many as possible parties into the developmental direction and the SDG implementation directions. The challenge is how to get also the private sector.
Right.
Private sector involvement is crucial because their effectiveness, their efficiency sometimes is far beyond the public sector. So the challenge is how to get them involved. And I think in the latest period now we can see that even the private sector is aware that social corporate responsibility can be a model of their own business growth. Actually, this is something that we have examples of bringing up, let's say, a Malaysian company going up and setting up the halal standards in Uganda, you know, where they contributed in and they gave their times and efforts and knowledge in setting up. Of course, they would have benefit in the future development of that. So I think how do we get not only private sector but academia, institutions, civil societies, we really have to get all on board, because with these disasters, for example, from climate change that we saw recently in Pakistan and floods in Sudan and other parts of the world, even in Germany, we really have disasters that we did not have in the past. And we have to be really to hold hands together and find ways how to do. Of course, we have modalities such as Islamic banking and finance and setting up financial institutions and doing sukuks and the green sukuk, examples of us issuing sukuks of 2.5 billion and 1 billion euros. And we have different modalities, but the secret of success for us is to find the way of cooperation and involvement of all parties on the ground, because we do not have that luxury of anyone being out of the picture. And once we are all and we hold hands together on this, I think that's the only way we have a chance to tackle the very challenging future which is ahead of us.
What a wonderful way to close on collaboration, not just across the global south, but north, south, public sector, private sector, academia, and the third sector. So thank you very much to my panelists, and thank you to the audience for a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, James.